About a year and a half ago, our family got a dog. Her preference is to be on your lap all the time. She just wants to be with you. She wants to spend time with you. She doesn't ever want you to leave. What happens, though, when you come home is my favorite part. When you get home, she's normally in the window watching. And it doesn't matter whether I've gotten home from a day at work, or it doesn't matter if I've just run to the store, or it doesn't matter if I've just walked downstairs to change the laundry. When she sees me come home, it is the best thing in the world. She starts to wiggle all over, and her tail just wags, and she'll come and sit on your feet until you scratch her for a little while, and you have this moment. It's the best welcome ever. There's something beautiful about being welcomed home or welcomed into a space, into a new community, because when we are welcomed, we know that we are seen and loved. We know that we are appreciated. We know that we are wanted. The welcome that we receive in our life is a powerful thing. It lets us know who we belong to. It lets us know where we fit and that we matter. The story we read today is a story of welcome. It's the story of God's welcome that is incredibly powerful and scandalous and surprising. It's a beautiful story where we see God welcome in someone new. But it's not just a story of welcome. If we're honest, there's a story of heartbreak and separation. It's a story of pain. It's a story of challenge. The story that we hear today is the story that speaks to us on so many different levels. It happens in Luke 15. Jesus is teaching. And the first part of this chapter that we read in Luke 15 is one of my favorite things about Jesus. Jesus gets in trouble with religious people because he eats with sinners and tax collectors. Jesus gets in trouble with religious people because he eats with the wrong folks. It's a little blip, those 3 verses, that have continued to challenge the way that I want to do ministry and who I want to be. I want to be seen eating with the wrong people. And I just want to toss this out there for you. This is not most of the sermon, but it's just out there. When was the last time you ate with someone who was a sinner or a tax collector? Like actually sat down and broke bread and ate with someone who was far away from Jesus? Because I believe really deeply that when we eat together and talk together and share a relationship together, God's Spirit does something magical and mysterious and beautiful in our midst. I think if the church spent more time eating with sinners and tax collectors rather than talking about sinners and tax collectors, we'd be different people. Jesus has been doing this. He's been in trouble. And the Pharisees come and start to push him, and so Jesus tells some stories. And the stories he tells in Luke 15 are stories of things lost and found. He starts and tells a story of a coin that's lost and found, a lady who's lost it, and she searches her whole house to find it. Now, who hasn't done that, right? We've all been in the car at Aldi, and we need that quarter, and so you're searching to find it. We can all say, yeah, that story makes sense. But then he tells the story of a shepherd who lost one sheep and left the 99 to go find them. And now we hear this story and we think, well, that's a little more extreme, right? Because there's still some things happening there, but we can see it and it makes sense. But then he culminates these stories when he tells us the story of the prodigal son who has left his family to go do his own thing. And suddenly the stories that we hear are full of power and nuance because they are full of emotion, and we can experience that and know that we have been the prodigal, or we have been the father, or we have been the older son waiting for something to happen. And it's not as easy as the fact that a coin is lost or a sheep wanders away. The prodigal makes a decision to do something radical and to burn the bridges. And so we begin to experience some sense of discomfort because in some ways we can say, well, he had what's coming to him. He's still his father's son. You see, there's this sense of our identity that continues to be at work in us. And I wonder if this prodigal son has started to sense his identity, that no matter what he's done, he's still his father's son, and there might be a place for him. Maybe today, you feel like the prodigal. Maybe you've been making your own decisions and doing your own things, and you've burned some bridges and tried to live your own life. Maybe you've gotten to a point where you say, I don't think I can do this anymore on my own. Hear this. You are loved, and there's nothing you can do about it. There is a deep sense of your identity that still holds you. You are still a daughter or son of the beloved. You are known, you are welcomed, and you can be forgiven. You can come home. You can come home. Now, maybe you're here today and you know there's someone in your family who's a prodigal. Maybe there's a child or a grandchild or a friend, a sibling that has done their own prodigal thing. They're out there living their life and you want nothing more for them to come home. Here's the reality. You can't make them do it. You can't confront them and tell them to change their wicked ways. It's not going to work. The thing that you can do is continue to remind them who they are, that they are loved, that they are welcome, that they can come home. So the son turns and he begins to make his way home. And then we see this beautiful picture of the father. When the father sees the son, even as the son is far off, the father begins to run. Suddenly we see this beautiful picture of a God who is looking and watching and waiting. The father doesn't know the son's coming home. The father thinks the son is long gone, but the father hasn't stopped watching. The father hasn't stopped watching, so when that figure appears on the horizon, the father knows who it is. Even in the midst of the mess, even in the midst of the dirtiness, even in the midst of the gauntness, the father knows who it is. The father has been watching and waiting. This is a beautiful picture of God, a beautiful picture of God who does not give up on us, running towards the son to wrap him up in the embrace of grace, to wrap him up no matter that he is smelly and stinky, to wrap him up no matter that he has spent several days with pigs, the father runs to embrace. What a beautiful picture of our God. A God who continues to seek us and wait for us and long for us. A God who wraps us up in an embrace no matter where we've been. A God who does not hold us far away but welcomes us home. This is a beautiful picture of God. And when we can begin to understand this, it transforms us and shapes us. It offers us some level of hope. You are not too far gone for God's embrace. As the son tries to offer some explanation, the father doesn't care and wraps him in his arms and says, "Welcome home." This changes our picture of God, doesn't it? God is not judgmental. God is not wrathful. God doesn't wait for us to get our just desserts. God offers us deep compassion and grace. And then God says this, we're going to throw a party. We're going to throw a party. Because the son of mine who is dead has come back to life. We're going to throw a party. Now, church, let me be pretty clear with you. I think we should be party people. I do. I think we should be party people. I think we should be known for throwing the best parties because we are the people who knows that God continues to bring life from death. We are the people that hold to this idea that there is hope and life. We are the people that should throw some parties. And so when people come in who are far away from Jesus, we should have balloons. There should be balloons every Sunday, right? There should be celebration every Sunday because we've experienced this grace, this embrace. We've experienced this scandalous love. We should be known as party people. I want us to throw a party. I'm serious, and not just like, a metaphorical party. Let's throw a real party and celebrate the work that God is doing and celebrate the people that have come home and celebrate the work that God continues to do. The party's happening, and it's a good one. I mean, there's music and dancing and a fatted calf. Like, this is a place you want to be. And we meet the older son. You know, the story says there's a man who has two sons, right? Both sons matter to us in this story. He comes home from the fields. He's been working. He's been slaving. He's been doing all the things he needs to do. And he comes home and sees the party and begins to figure out what's happening. And needless to say, he's not too pleased with it. You see, the sin of the younger son is easy to see. But maybe the sins of the older son are more difficult to see, but still is relevant to us. Because the older son is filled with arrogance and pride. The older son is filled with a self-righteousness. The older son somehow has lost the view of the abundance of the father and somehow thinks if there's not enough, there might not be enough for him too as the party goes on. Friends, I'm afraid that sometimes in the church we are way more like the older son than we'd like ourselves to be. I'm afraid that sometimes when people come in looking for something new, we say, well, you haven't been here, or you don't look right, or you don't smell right, or you've been with the pigs. Like, I'm afraid that in the church, we've become more like the older son than we should be. I think that for us, as Suncrest, doing the work we've been called to do, we need to be people that offer life and hope and know what it means to throw a good party. I think we can throw a better party than anything that happens on Spruce Street, because I think that's the work that God's called us to. May we be people who throw a party. May we be people who know the rich embrace of God's love. May we be people who offer that grace to anyone we meet, that they might know their love too.